All right, Drivetrain, we're back. It is the next video. If you remember in the previous video, I mentioned that I was going to start transitioning some stuff from a previous channel over to this channel. This channel is called the Drivetrain. It's about things that have gears on them, things that move. Typically, right now, we're talking about bikes. We're talking about some fitness stuff. However, this also pertains to automobiles. Previous video, we showed you a little bit of a car that I was working on, but now we're gonna dive into the project that has been ongoing now for about 3 years. So I started this project a couple years ago. This video was shot when I first started posting on YouTube. So the quality, the equipment that I had, not so good. But the content is there, and it's a journey that I want to take you guys on kind of from start to finish. We're not done yet, but from start up to current, and we're just going to go kind of video by video. Now, the other channel is called Alum House. You're going to hear me reference Alum House. You're going to see maybe in the bottom corner on this side or that side an Alum House logo, and that's cool. That's where this stuff was previously, but that channel now is all about audio. So, without further ado, let's roll the intro clip and get into this video. Here we go. All right, guys, we're back. This is Dave with Alum House, and man, it's happening. So if you saw one of the earlier videos, we finally got the garage floor, paved, concreted, leveled out, and pulled the truck in. If you haven't checked out the earlier video, this is a 1954 Chevy 3100 pickup. This thing is all stock from 1954. It's all stock, and it drives like a tank. It's fantastic. It has no brakes. The steering is horrible. It's so wobbly. It's ridiculous. The suspension is kind of hanging off in the back end, and I think it's got maybe 1 or 2 shocks that might kind of function. But this thing was a farm truck. It's beaten up. It's got farm tires in the back and the old bias plies. But I'm just going to take you through some videos here. We started to tear it down. And so this is where it starts right here. We kind of get it up onto some jack stands finally. This was like the whole reason for redoing the garage floor, was to be able to put this thing up on jack stands comfortably, roll up and down from underneath it, and not feel concerned because of the wobbly nature of the concrete. So it's working. It's so exciting. Yeah, we just started tearing this thing apart, man. We wanted to blow it all apart as much as we could to get it to, the goal is to get it to driving. And so we wanted to just be able to take it down the street. So we got the front grille, got the bumper, the lights out. You can see that big horn there on the right-hand side. It looks kind of like a snail, and the thing is so loud. So this thing, just so you know, has a 6-volt electric system, which is what they used to run. They switched it over in late 55. So about a year later, I would have had a 12-volt system, but this is 6-volt. But what most people do is they just convert it. That's what we're going to do. We're going to convert it to 12-volt so that we will swap out headlights and any lights that are needed. We'll swap out all the important things and put some resistors in certain places and make it run off of a normal 12-volt car battery. What that means is that the horn is twice as loud as it was before, and that thing will wake you up quick. Then we started taking fenders off, and you can see back here, right where the door and that cowl comes down in front of the door, you can see some rot there. There's actually a lot of rot in this truck. I think later on, after we get it running and we drive it a little bit and just have fun with it, use it like an old beat up pickup truck, I think later on we're gonna go ahead and actually do some body work on this thing. But for right now, this is what you got. So these old brakes, we started to pull these things apart and they were seized on here, but this is the driver's side. You can see the steering is that that arm that's coming down, and it connects up to the steering knuckle. You got a bunch of stuff in the top right that's hanging out, part of the parking brake assembly, which does not work. There you go, that's the steering knuckle. So we'll end up having to redo the brakes. This has a single reservoir master cylinder on it, and so if anything happens with one wheel, you lose all of your brakes, which is where I'm at right now. I had somebody bravely standing in front of me with a wheel chock that would toss the wheel chock in front of the wheel when I yelled at them so that I didn't run through my garage. But there you go. There's actually a good picture of that rot. Yeah, it's kind of nasty, but it's there together right now. I think the rust is actually what's holding it together. You know, this is the cowl. This is up on the cowl. So this is the air vent. This is how you get fresh air into the truck, and it's kind of nice. It should blow down across your feet and kind of help move the air down there. But that pops up with this old nasty rusty lever that's inside. So we'll have to grease that up too. But if we keep going along here, you see we got the fenders pulled off, keeping the inner fenders on there just so we can do the suspension work. And you see the passenger side there. Yeah, this is just it's a crazy project because I'm coming out, 10 minutes here, 20 minutes there, just trying to pull out some bolts. Half of these bolts I was having to cut and grind and just kind of rip apart. I got my daughter in the action here. We're getting ready to swap out a leaf spring. So I ordered some Weston lowered leaf springs and Western chassis. That's what it is. Western chassis. They've got a 2.5 inch drop up front and a 3.5 inch in the rear. And they've got some lowered shocks as well. So Western chassis, yeah, lowering shocks and springs. So we got to take these U-bolts off, and these things are pretty well attached. They're rusted on. So a lot of them came loose. I went through a whole can of PB Blaster on this, just the suspension alone. Let it sit for a day or two, and then come back out, try and break them loose. Try and put an impact on them, but just get the old breaker bar out and break these things loose was all you could do. So we ordered some custom U-bolts for it as well, just because these were no longer going to be usable. 2 or 3 on each one would end up breaking off. These are just some shots of, on the rear end, you got the leaf springs there attaching, sitting up on the axle. It's kind of the front kingpin bolt. It's a pretty dark picture, but anyway, we've got just some snapshots of before here. So that's the rear shackle, rear hanger. We got some new ones of those as well. So here you can see actually now we've got one of the new leaf springs in up front. This is on the passenger side. So it's just mocked up in place. There's no U-bolts on it just yet, but yeah, just walking through. There's in the rear. At the rear? I can't tell which side that is. They've all, because it's leaf springs, they've all got shackles that look like that, and then the single eyelet hangers. All right, so that was a lot of the teardown. Now we start to get into the rebuild. You can see in the background there we've got new leaf spring in there, along with the new U-bolts and the shock hangers in. But we start to get into the brakes. You can see here this kind of actually a mock-up picture with just the drum on there. But if we scoot forward, we're going to see we put in new brake shoes. We've got some new springs in the bottom. We've got a new tension rod. We've got new wheel cylinders. We've got all kinds of new parts. We ran new lines to each corner, just because a lot of it was rusted out or bent. We also put in a dual reservoir master cylinder. So we took out the old single reservoir, put a dual reservoir, which gives you, individual front and rear. So if something happens in the back, you only lose back brakes. You still have front brakes or vice versa. So here's a shot of the back end. Again, you can see the new leaf spring in there, which is going to give me a 3.5 inch drop in the back. And we've got a new shock mounted up in there as well. So things are coming together here. Just a couple other shots of the new suspension. And once we got the whole truck pulled apart, it actually was not too terribly bad. Putting everything in, you can see some new brake lines here that we put on. Just really had to freshen everything up. Redo the brakes. If I'm going to take this thing on the road at all, I wanted to make sure that it's going to at least stop. Now, there's no power assist on any of this. So these brakes are, it's manual brakes. So when you push, the harder you push, the more fluid goes out to the brakes. So you got to kind of plan how you're going to stop. But yeah, so just a couple shots of that back end. You can see now we're starting to put this thing back together. Starting to get some wheels on, take it through the alley, test it out, and see how things go. And then the glorious moment, we put the fenders back on, put the front bumper back on, and wired up some turn signals, and still just in its bare minimum state. We haven't done a full 12-volt conversion yet, but I drove it to the grocery store. It sputtered and popped and was, needing some love. You can actually see the new radiator peeking behind there. The old one was pretty rusted out on the bottom, but put a new aluminum radiator in there. But this thing made it. It made it on the road. It made it 2.5 miles down the street and back, so total round trip. But it was exciting. I was smiling the whole way. I was all over the lane because the steering, again, needs to be tightened up. And that's maybe something else to look at in the next video. But yeah, man, this thing was on the road and driving. So man, what a relief. We're still trying to come up with a name for this thing though. It's green, it's rusty, it's yeah, that's kind of it. It's green and rusty. It's rough, but man, it's such a cool truck. I've got to put the grill back on after I finish up any wiring that needs to be done. But stick around for the next video. This was kind of the first exciting moment of getting the truck, kind of the first tear down, getting some suspension put on it. It's been a long time coming, and finally got to drive it on the road. So check out the next video, follow the series, hit the like button, subscribe, and yeah, and just follow along with this 1954 Chevy pickup build. All right, we'll see you next time.